Yes. And we don't really know why it's so important, but we're going to find out a little bit more about soil. I've got a whole host of books up here on different topics that are all important. So I usually want to get the depressing stuff over with first. So we'll kind of talk about what's wrong with the planet, and rather than me depress you, I'll just point you to this book. And I don't know if you're familiar with Bill McKibben, but Bill McKibben writes a lot of really important literature about kind of what's wrong with the planet and what we're doing to mess it up. And sometimes towards somewhere about like the last page or two, he gives you like a glimmer of hope. But basically we're screwed. And so it's a great book to find out where we are, but really we need positive messages, and there is hope, otherwise I wouldn't be here doing this. And the hope is with you guys and spreading the word about soil. There's nothing more important than our topsoil, and most people don't get all geeked out about soil like I do, but think about all the food that you eat, not the junk food, like the real food that you eat. Where does it come from? Soil, somewhere. Somewhere on this planet your food is grown. It might be grown in China, because now more than 50% of our food comes from China. Do you know what they're doing in China? Are they taking good care of their topsoil? Unfortunately, no. For every pound of food grown in China, they lose somewhere between 18 to 23 pounds of topsoil. That's not so good in a sustainable fashion. Now you might think, well, the U.S., we must do a lot better than that. Well, I'm here to tell you that we actually average about 6 pounds of topsoil lost for every pound of food you eat. Does anyone see anything wrong with that picture? Like,
Yes.
6 pounds of topsoil disappearing for each pound of food we eat. Well, if topsoil is important for growing food, and we're losing more of it per pound of food we eat, that's probably bad. Now, California, you think we're pretty hip, right? California loses 24 pounds. That's worse than China's average. So we lose 24 pounds of topsoil per pound of food we eat. That's not a good picture. So how do we stop losing topsoil? Why is topsoil disappearing? What is it about our agricultural practices that make topsoil disappear? Anyone care to guess?
Irresponsible watering methods.
That's one.
Herbicides?
That's another.
They don't know
The industrialization of monocultures.
All these are great answers. So there's a whole host of reasons why we're losing topsoil. But I'll tell you, one of the biggest reasons is tillage. So when we go in, back in the old days, back before we had these really powerful tractors, we used to use horses and wooden implements to turn the soil. And they noticed that it improved, things got better when you turned the soil. So that was a good thing. But that was using a horse, and maybe they did it once a year. So a little disturbance in soil can produce results. But if you magnify that and you start tilling your field 12, 18 times a year, the good things that used to happen from tilling your soil, they ain't happening. Sorry for using bad English, but I couldn't help it. That's just, it's not happening if you're tilling your soil all the time. And we're just beginning to find out why. They've known why for a long time, but it hasn't stopped anyone from doing it. But the more they study this, they're realizing, hey, there's this important life form called fungi. Maybe you guys have heard of that stuff. Mushrooms, and not the kind that you're thinking of. I'm talking about mycorrhizal mushrooms. These are a fungus that you don't even see a fruiting body, but they develop relationships with roots. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But these things have a fungal network. So if I go through the field with a big ripper, and then I disc and do a few other techniques that are common on fields, you've just disturbed that whole fungal network. If you do that repeatedly, something that is a big, large network, and you chop it into little pieces, it doesn't just keep growing back. Eventually it's like, wow, I can't find a root. I'm gonna just dehydrate and die here. And some of the other problems with tillage is it exposes all that organic matter that was in the soil, like it could be roots, it could be earthworms, so it could be both living and dead matter that's organic matter in the soil. As soon as that gets exposed to the air, guess what? It off-gasses. It vaporizes up there. CO2 in our atmosphere, maybe you've seen some of those charts, Inconvenient Truth or worse, or you go to 350.org. Anyone familiar with 350.org? Okay. So 350.org, that's 350 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. That's kind of what they think is a good amount that we can actually live on this planet. We've now exceeded 400. If you look at a graph over time, it's like off the charts. So where's all that CO2 coming from? Is it because we're burning fossil fuels? Is that where the bulk of it comes from? As we're burning fossil fuels, we're creating greenhouse gases? Nope, it's not. It's actually bad agriculture, bad agricultural practices. And it has to do a lot with grazing, the way we graze on landscape, which is probably more like 80% of the arable land. I believe it's 82% of arable land is used for livestock, not for growing food that we eat. 82%. So we only grow food that we actually eat. A lot of the land is used for growing food for livestock. And I'm not here to bash livestock. Livestock are the only thing that can actually save us. And if you don't believe me, go check out Alan Savory's TED Talk. This guy's been studying how to graze properly for over 60 years. And his TED Talk's awesome. It talks about how to sequester carbon and reverse desertification based on proper grazing techniques on semi-arid lands, which is what we tend to turn things into. If you don't think that's true, I'm going to invite you to read chapter 1 of Tending the Wild.